Hey, welcome back to That 70s Card Show. I'm your host, John Keating, and I thank you for joining me as I take a look back at the cards and the culture of the very colorful 1970s. We'll revisit a more simple time in our hobby by taking a deep dive into the sets and the stats with a generous amount of dad facts sprinkled in. That 70s Card Show is currently sponsored by nobody. If you have a comment or suggestion, I urge you to drop me a line at that70scardshow at gmail.com. That 70s Card Show on YouTube and 70s Card on Twitter. This is episode 68, and I am coming to you from Los Angeles, California, Veterans Day 2022. And as somebody who grew up going to Veterans Stadium in the 70s, I can tell you that the veterans have kind of always been on my mind. I think I don't come from a military family. My brother Joseph served as an airman in the Air Force and an officer in the Coast Guard, and my nephew Brendan in the Army National Guard. Other than that, my brother Paul and I were members of the Methacton Warrior Band, not to be mistaken for the armed forces by any means. I had an uncle or two that perhaps served back in the day in the World War II. My grandfather, interestingly enough, was a veteran of World War I. The legend had it that he was a Jeep driver for, I think, General Pershing in World War I. My grandfather was born in the 1800s. Driving that Jeep over there in France with the rest of the doughboys. One of my brothers uncovered recently, within the past year, the manifest for the ship that my grandfather shipped off to France back then in World War I. And it turns out apparently he showed up after the war had already ended, came for the after party. So was not shot in the stomach, did not drive a general around in battle or anger, just there for perhaps the gift bag and whatnot. The veterans, a lot of respect, obviously, we have for all of them. I think it's great that it's kind of a two-way street, that they protect us as well as getting something in return for their service to our country. I think our country is made better by many members of the services coming out into the civilian world with the skills that they have learned and applied and are able to master and apply in the real world. So thank you, veterans. Appreciate that. We're going to talk about some veterans here. 70s veterans, and this is not all the veterans by any means, but there's a couple people that I would like to shout out in this episode. Of course, we have some basketball veterans that were that played into the 70s. Gentlemen like Elgin Baylor, wonderful basketball player, of course, Hall of Famer. Elgin Baylor, it says here, is among the greatest players of all time. He turned around a struggling Lakers team in his rookie season. I believe they were the Minnesota Lakers back then, if I'm not mistaken. And during his fourth year, he served as an Army reservist living at Fort Lewis. He couldn't attend practices or weekday games, but still averaged 38 points per game and 18 rebounds to go along with 4 assists. Elgin Baylor, I have thrown up there on my screen, the 71-72 Topps basketball card number 10. It says on the back of that card, one of Elgin's many records is for the most points in one game by a Laker, 71 against the Knicks in 1960. He's been in 11 All-Star games. Wonderful card. That 71-72 Topps basketball is just a party for my eyeballs. Colors, fonts, all sorts of fun stuff. So Elgin Baylor, happy Veterans Day to you. Next gentleman we're going to reach out and touch is Bill Bradley. Bill Bradley, of course, was a senator, I think, from Jersey. I believe. Anyway, I've shown his 72-73 Knicks cards. It says Bill Bradley was a scholar who attended Princeton and Oxford universities. He helped lead the New York Knicks to 2 NBA titles. During this time, he was a member of the U.S. Air Force Reserve. A lot going on, obviously, in the late 60s and 70s. Bill Bradley's card number 122 from 1972-73 has a little bio back there. It says, Bill provides Knicks with a fluid offense and plays a key role in team's defensive setup. He was a big scorer on intercollegiate circuit, scoring 2,503 points in an 83-game Princeton varsity career. And to top all that off, NBA champion, 2,500 points at Princeton. And if we remember correctly, they were only playing 3 years of college basketball back then, sophomore, junior, and senior year. Two-time NBA champion, we said, and more importantly, the card clearly says on the back, Bill has a fine speaking voice. So happy Veterans Day to you, Bill Bradley. Appreciate all you have done for your country. All right, moving on now to one of the greatest sets of all time, the 1975 Topps set. We're going to talk about baseball here, and I have Jerry Terrell coming up now. Why Jerry Terrell? Well, 1975 would be the last year that we see the term in military service written on the stat line for the players. And that was a very common thing prior to that, especially in the late 60s. Remember, there was a lot of drafting going on, and it wasn't just into athletic teams, but into the armed forces, mandatory service, all that stuff. A lot of great players throughout history were in the military. A lot of them reached out into the 70s there, like Willie Mays, of course, and Roberto Clemente and Tom Seaver and stuff like that. But we're going to look at the 75 cards that have in military service on the back of them. And this one is for Jerry Terrell, or Terrell, shortstop, second baseman, card 654. In the 75 Topps set, he was a twin, and he's rocking the purple and the pink down below on his card, twins in yellow. Again, drop shadow. I know I talked about this recently. So Jerry, old Jerry, minor leaguer, batted .296 in his first season with Auburn, which I guess is low A ball perhaps, but he missed the entire 1969 season due to serving in the reserves and stationed stateside during the Vietnam War. Keep in mind, these aren't the only people that served during that time, but these are the only people with surviving in military service stat lines in the 1975 set. Moving on, another Minnesotian is this guy's a true blue Minnesotian. This is Dave Goltz from the Twins, a pitcher. And him right there, he is rocking the brown over tan earth tones of the mid-70s in his card. David Allen Goltz was card 419 in the 1975 Topps series. It says Dave was an all-star in Sarasota in 1967, but he spent 1969 away from baseball when he was called to active duty with his Army Reserve unit as a helicopter mechanic. So this guy could not only pitch, but he could fix your helicopter in a pinch as well. That's quite the talent there. Dave Goltz would be a longtime major leaguer. Of course, most of us recognize him from the 70s. I was remiss to go over Jerry Terrell's career stats, but he would finish with a whopping 4 home runs in his career, 412 hits, a .253 hitter. He played from 1973 to 1980. Kind of a top-heavy career there. Started 100 games or played 100 games in the first 3 seasons and then kind of petered out as he went along. Moving on to Goltzy there. I call him Goltzy because we're pals. Goltz made his debut in 1972, and he played all the way up to 1983. He won the 1980 World Series as a member of the Los Angeles Dodgers, contributing that year 2 wins, 7 losses, and a save. Postseason-wise, let's see what he did in the postseason. He did not play in the NLDS or the NLCS and pitched in 2 games with a 5.40 ERA in the 1981 World Series. Also played in the 82 ALCS with the California Angels. Career record for old Goltzy was 113 and 109. He was a 20-game winner in 1977 for the Minnesota Twins. Predominantly a Twin, played 8 years there. Most of his wins came with the Twins as well. So, old Goltzy, happy Veterans Day to you. Happy Veterans Day, of course, to Jerry Terrell. We are going to move on now to another chap So this guy here is a pretty special guy, I think, right? Because this guy's a two-time world champion, and also his name is Ed Figueroa. Ed Figueroa is pictured here in a Angels uniform. He's got that great Angels logo, the great Angels top with the state of California on his left arm, and a big blue glove for some reason. But the card is a green topped border above purple. Angels in pink. Of course, he's a pitcher, and it says so right there on his card. One of the fun things about Ed Figueroa is he is from Puerto Rico, and he was a Puerto Rican veteran who served his 1969 season in military service, clearly spelled out there on the back of his card. We'll read a little bit about Ed Figueroa here, if that's okay. In 1968, Figueroa pitched for Raleigh-Durham in the Carolina League, but his season fizzled out. A 2008 feature by Anthony McCarron for the Daily News of New York told the story. He was called to take a draft physical in Puerto Rico. The Mets said go for a week and come back, but he stayed with his girlfriend for 3 weeks. Ed said, when you're 18, you don't know what you're doing. So the day he returned back, he pitched and hurt his arm. Then the Marines called, the Mets released him, and Figueroa spent the next year in Vietnam. I didn't know what the heck I was doing there, but I was there. I learned that life is beautiful. It's beautiful to be alive. I saw a lot of people dead there. When I got out of there, I was happy I was out, happy I was alive. So obviously, be a man or woman of your word. If you say you're going to go to Puerto Rico for a week, go to Puerto Rico for a week. Don't overstay, or this is what happens. You'll end up in a bit of a pickle. Ed Figueroa, two-time world champion in 77 and 78 for the mighty New York Yankees. He was a 20-game winner in 1978, won 19 games in 76. And for those Angels in 1975, a 16-game winner. His career, he would finish 8 and 67. After he left New York, it just went downhill from there. Finished out in 80 in splitting between the Yankees and the Rangers and the Oakland A's in 81. Decent pitcher, got a couple rings. Let's see how he did in the postseason. His postseason record is 0-4, so he really didn't show up in October at all. Ed Figueroa, 74 through 81. Thank you for your service to our country. And we are going to move on here to a guy that I really, really can wrap my arms around. This was probably my mother's favorite player back in the late 70s, Philadelphia Phillies teams. Huge fan of Gary Lee Maddox. This guy, as they said, the water covered 2/3 of the earth, and Gary Maddox covered the other third. I mentioned before that he really also covered the large derriere of Greg Luzinski out there, patrolling both left field and right field, left field and center field, leaving right field to bake McBride. Gary Maddox has his 1975 card, number 240 here. 2 years of military service there, and wait till you hear his story. It's quite interesting. Gary was born Cincinnati, Ohio, but as a young boy, they moved out to Los Angeles, San Pedro, with his family. Didn't have a very good upbringing. He likes to say he had, I believe, 8 siblings. So he says he got 9. 9 of them would share one toy at Christmas, which is heartbreaking. But Gary Maddox, always a great guy. Let's read a little bit about him. So Gary Maddox began the 1968 season playing rookie ball for Salt Lake City, where he patrolled center field and hit .252 in 58 games. He then played 5 late summer games with the Class A Fresno Giants. Yet, at the beginning of the season, Maddox discovered his $1,500 signing bonus was dramatically below what a second-rounder could expect. I played that one season, and then I quit, and I joined the Army, he explained. I was bitter. I didn't like the hassle. My family needed the money. So this is a guy at the height of the Vietnam War who actually quit professional baseball and enlisted in the Army all on his own. By April 1969, the 19-year-old was in Vietnam. I can remember when we first got off the plane, he recalled. They put us in tents. It had to be at least 110 degrees. We were sitting there hot with flies all around, and we're saying 364 more days of this. Maddox served as a perimeter guard, occasionally being shot at, but avoided the worst of the conflict. Yet he witnessed the aftermath of a friend's suicide, racial conflict within his camp, and considered the experience pure hell. The scene over there was going to change you one way or another, he reflected. One evening, he joined some colleagues on their way to Mass. I told the priest I wanted to talk about my sins. He asked me if I was Catholic. Well, I said no. And he asked me if I'd like to become one. I said yes, Maddox recalled. 6 months later, he was baptized. Maddox later attended a non-denominational church, but his faith would remain constant source of guidance. So old Gary Lee found God in Vietnam. I'm sure quite a few of his colleagues did as well. Maddox had enlisted for 4 years, but when he was in Vietnam, his father suffered multiple heart attacks. He applied for a hardship discharge to help take care of his family. As he later recalled, in order to get out on a hardship discharge, you have to have a job. And the only thing I had done was, right after high school, played a little bit of baseball. So Maddox reached out to the Giants, who agreed to take him back. Later, he found community with other veterans, but when he returned home in April 1970, what happened in Vietnam was completely blacked out of my mind. One immediate after effect, a facial rash that made shaving difficult and painful. Maddox's trademark beard was born. He later wondered if Agent Orange was responsible for the rash and bumps that developed under his skin. Gary Maddox, again, awesome player. He was an heir apparent to Willie Mays. I believe they traded Willie Mays because of his ascension into the outfield there of the Giants. Wonderfully solid player throughout his career. He would gather 1,802 hits, 117 home runs, career 285 batting average. He was a 1980 World Series winner. He wore number 31 for my beloved Phillies. Made his debut April 25th, 1972, and gracefully bowed out at the age of 36, April 20th, 1986. Gary was an eight-time Gold Glover. I'm sorry. So he won one Gold Glove over there in San Francisco, I believe, where it was a split season, but then he went on a massive 7-season run from 1976 to 1982, where he was the National League center field Gold Glove winner. Gary Maddox, thank you for your service. Thank you for your bringing that trophy to Philadelphia, your contributions in the 1980 NLCS, and I forgive you for the muffed line drive at Dodger Stadium in 1978. So moving on then, this guy here, talk about somebody that flies under the radar. We're going to talk about Al Bunbury. Okay, Al Bunbury was a heck of a player, a legend in Baltimore, and just seemed like an all-around, well-put-together fella, smart guy, athletic, just the complete package, I guess you would say. Al Bunbury, we'll read about him here. He was born in Virginia back in 1947, so he was a boomer. And we'll do a little biography here of Al Bunbury, who was known as the Bee. A physical education major at Virginia State, Bunbury intended to teach high school after graduating. Teaching didn't dawn on me until after my second year in school, and I began thinking about what I'd be doing after I got out. The more I thought about it, the less I wanted to teach. Given his focus on basketball previously, Bunbury did not play baseball in college until his senior year. In his only season, for the VSU Trojans, however, he batted .578 and exhibited enough baseball acumen and skill to catch the eye of the Baltimore Orioles scout Dick Bowie. Following his graduation from Virginia State in 1968, this is episode 68, by the way, the 11th round draft pick signed as a summer free agent with the Orioles organization. He joined the team's Class A affiliate in Stockton, California for the 1969 season. If I had a choice, I probably would have tried pro basketball, said Bunbury. This was my first love, and personally, I think I would have had a shot at making it. And I guess they thought I was too small. There weren't too many small guys around the NBA when I was a kid. Bob Cousy, Guy Rogers, that was about it. Anyway, there weren't any offers, so when the baseball chance came along, I took it. Only 2 months after The season at Stockton began, however. Bunbury was drafted into the U.S. Army. He served in Vietnam as a platoon leader for 11 months. Nearly 30 years later, Bunbury said of his military service, "I'd made an obligation. What was I going to do? Run away?" The conditions Bunbury faced in the jungles of Vietnam were difficult, and two of the men in his platoon were killed. One stepped on a mine, and the other was killed in an explosion. For his service in combat, Bunbury was awarded the Bronze Star. So that's something we probably didn't know about Al Bunbury, unless we dig deep into his history. Bunbury says, "The only thing I could say about that experience is I'm no hero, but I committed to being an officer. I knew that part of the responsibility was that I might have to go to Vietnam. So when my time came, I went. The only way I can describe it in terms of baseball is people say, 'Gee whiz, you missed 2 years of your baseball career.' I say, no, I didn't. Why? Because before I went to Vietnam, I was in Class A League and I hit 178. Then I came back, and in a year and a half, I was in the major leagues, so I can't complain. There was no guarantee that I was even going to be playing after hitting 178. Boy, what a guy that is, huh? We all need to be more like Al Bunbury, that's for sure. When he returned from Vietnam, Bunbury re-entered the Orioles minor league system with the Aberdeen such and suches in 1971. The Northern League team had slightly lower ranking than Stockton, but Bunbury took advantage of the opportunity, batting .336 in 66 games while stealing 34 bases in 39 attempts. His time with Aberdeen was so distinguished that he was named the Northern League Player of the Year. Still, he was a 24-year-old who had never played higher than Class A, and Bunbury's major league potential remained in doubt. So he would make his debut in 1972 at the age of 25. Didn't do much in his debut, but he stuck around long enough. He played up until he was 38. October 5th, 1985 was his last game. I believe he was with the San Diego Padres at that point. His full name, by the way, is Alonzo Benjamin Bunbury. That's Alonzo Benjamin Bunbury. Again, the B. The B was Rookie of the Year in 1973 when he had 120 hits, batted .337, 11 triples to lead the league, 34 RBIs, and 23 stolen bases, but he was caught stealing 10 times. One-time All-Star, and that would happen in 1980, and 1983 World Series champion with the Baltimore Orioles. He kind of came up at that tail end of the Orioles' dominance, and they would be the Orioles would kind of be second-class citizens to the A's and the Yankees for the rest of the decade. But he would stick around long enough to get that ring in 1983. Career 281 hitter, 1,422 hits, stolen bases 254. He was a great center fielder, I believe, and again, beloved gentleman in Baltimore and beyond, for sure. Yeah. So, Al Bunbury, thank you for your service. You are a hero, Bronze Star Medal winner in Vietnam, an officer, and I'm sure a gentleman, judging by what I've read about you here on Baseball Reference. And his 1970 Topps card, again, Alonzo Benjamin Bunbury, says his military service year was in 1970, and card number 358, a great tribute to him. Little red on top of orange there, a light tower at spring training, and a great smile from a man who surely went through hell while over there in Vietnam. All right, so that's baseball, military service. Again, military service on baseball cards. It's something I remember vividly from my youth for sure, and 75 was the last time we would see that in our on the back of our little pieces of cardboard. No, I'm not endorsed by Cheerio. I just love Cheerios, by the way, if you're watching at home. Let's talk about some football players. Of course, Roger Staubach. How can you not talk about Roger Staubach on the Veterans Day? Captain America, as they called him, obviously a alumnus of the U.S. Naval Academy. And what did he do over there at the Naval Academy? He won some awards, didn't he? He won the Heisman Trophy, the Maxwell Award. He won the Chick Harley Award, the UPI Player of the Award, Sporting News Player of the Year, unanimous All-American, and his number 12 is retired by the Naval Academy down there. Roger Staubach, let's read a bit from him from Wikipedia, if you don't mind. We'll talk about his military career. During his junior year at the Naval Academy, Staubach's colorblindness was detected, and he was commissioned directly into the Supply Corps, which did not necessitate him being able to tell the difference between the red and the green lights or discern the color differences in electrical circuitry. After graduating from the Naval Academy in June 1965, Staubach could have requested an assignment in the United States, but he chose to volunteer for a one-year tour of duty in South Vietnam. He served as a Supply Corps officer for the Navy at Chu Lai Base area until 1967, supervising 41 enlisted men. Staubach returned from the South Vietnam in 1967 and spent the rest of his naval career in the United States. He played football in various service teams to prepare for his future career in the National Football League. During his tour at the Naval Air Station in Pensacola, he quarterbacked the Goshawks, whatever they are, a team consisting of fellow U.S. Navy officers like himself, and played games against college football teams. He had access to the Dallas Cowboys playbook, and the Goshawks defeated many of the college teams they played. So Roger Staubach, of course, was Military Institute there, New Mexico Military Institute, I guess, for a year, and then he went on to the Naval Academy. He was first drafted in the 16th round by the Kansas City Chiefs and of the 1964 AFL draft, and then the Cowboys in the 10th round of the 1964 NFL draft. So they kept your rights for a good long while. He wouldn't make his debut until 1969 and wouldn't really become the man in Dallas until 1971. His card here, his rookie card, the Butte, 1972. He just looks like a hero there. Pink kind of border around his picture with the Cowboys in yellow and Roger Staubach quarterback. Let's read from the back of card number 200 here. Keep in mind that our football players back then didn't get rookie cards in their first year for sure, let alone this guy, Roger Staubach, was in his fourth year before he got his rookie card. So Roger enjoyed a superb season in 1971 as he led the Cowboys to the NFL World's Championship. There's several worlds, not just this one, apparently. He was voted as MVP of the 1972 Super Bowl and named to all-star teams of almost every poll. One of the outstanding collegiate players of all time, he was the winner of the Heisman Trophy as a junior at Navy. Roger Staubach, thank you for what you've done for our country. I don't hold it against you that you were a Dallas Cowboy, but as all these guys have been shouted out here, you seem to be a great guy nonetheless. We're going to finish up the Veterans Day special here, episode 68, with a little tribute to a gentleman who made his bones in Pennsylvania, but left part of himself over there in Southeast Asia. Of course, we're talking about Rocky Bleier. Rocky Bleier, decorated veteran of the Vietnam War. Interesting path to the NFL, that's for sure. Let's see what we have here. Let's see if I can bring up some information on Bleier. Bleier is a Scotty, as my friends say. He was from Appleton, Wisconsin, born March 5th, 1946. Went to Notre Dame, drafted 46th round, I think. Is that right? Wow, that's crazy. And no, that doesn't make any sense. Anyway, he was drafted in the 16th round. My eyes aren't very good. 417th overall in the 1968 draft. Okay, I'm back in the saddle, folks. We're going to read a little bit about Rocky Bleier here, particularly about his military service in Vietnam. So, after his rookie season with the Steelers, Bleier was drafted into the U.S. Army on December 4th, 1968, during the Vietnam War. He volunteered for duty in South Vietnam and shipped out for Vietnam in May 1969, assigned to Company C, 4th Battalion, 31st Infantry, 196th Light Infantry Brigade, and assigned as a squad grenadier operating a 40 millimeter M79 grenade launcher. Wow. On August 20th, while on patrol in Yep Duck, Blyer was wounded in the left thigh by an enemy rifle bullet when his platoon was ambushed in a rice paddy. While he was down, an enemy grenade landed nearby after bouncing off a fellow soldier. He tried to leap over it, and it exploded, sending shrapnel into his lower leg. His right foot was severely damaged in the blast as well. He was later awarded the Bronze Star and Purple Heart. His rank was Specialist 4. While he was recovering in a hospital in Tokyo, doctors told him that he could not play football again. Soon after, he received a postcard from Steelers owner Art Rooney, which simply read, "Rock, the team's not doing well. We need you, Art Rooney." Blyer later said, "When you have somebody take the time and interest to send you a postcard, something that they didn't have to do, you have a special place for those kinds of people." After several surgeries, he was discharged from the military in 1970 and began informal workouts with Steeler teammates. Wow. So his NFL career here, it says Blyer rejoined the Steelers in camp in 1970. Upon his return, he couldn't walk without being in pain and weighed only 180 pounds. He was put on injured reserve for the season, but returned in 1971 and played on special teams. He spent several seasons trying to get increased playing time and was waived on 2 occasions, but Blyer never gave up and said he worked hard so that sometime in the future you don't have to ask yourself, what if? An off-season training regimen brought Blyer back to 212 pounds in the summer of 1974, and he earned a spot in the Steelers' starting lineup. Rocky Blyer, true hero, 4-time Super Bowl champion. He was the 1974 NFLPA Alan Page, I think, Player of the Year. Really started getting going as the Steelers got going, even rushed for 1,000 yards. This is a guy who shared a backfield or took a back seat to Franco Harris. So 76, he scored 5 touchdowns along with those 1,036 yards rushing. Rocky Blyer would play 1968, run off to Vietnam in 69 and 70, and come back to play 71 through 1980. What a player, what a gentleman, what an American, I guess you can say, right? We're looking at Rocky's card here. Rocky's rookie card, 1975 tops, has Rocky Blyer with full elbow pads, 3/4 length sleeves for his number 20 Pittsburgh Steelers classic black jersey, yellow pants. He's having a Gatorade or such. He's also suffering from a little male pattern baldness, but it doesn't matter when you're Rocky Blyer. You can look however you want. Let's read the back of card 39. Height 5'11", weight 206, it says, or 205. School Notre Dame. Birth date 3/5/46. Home Pittsburgh, PA. Drafted 16th in the 1968 draft. The highlights of 1974 for Rocky came in AFC Championship game and Super Bowl when he provided excellent yardage for the Steelers. He was all Midwest pick at Notre Dame. And his football card in 1975 clearly states 1969 and 1970 in military service, did not play. So that's that. That's my tribute to some veterans and a little bit of that fun 1970s stuff where we'll probably never see again, where it says in military service right there on the back of the sport athlete's card. So happy Veterans Day to all. It's appreciated what you've done for us, and hopefully we can repay the same to you by how you're treated once you leave the military. So thanks for joining me this week in my journey back in time. If you have a comment or suggestion, or perhaps you have a set from the 1970s you'd like me to take a look at, don't know why you would do that, but if that's the case, reach out to me at ThatSeventiesCardShow@gmail.com, ThatSeventiesCardShow on YouTube, or 70s Card on Twitter. If you're listening on your iApparatus, I'm being played off by Mango Safari, and 2 episodes in a row, but hopefully that's okay with all you folks because the weekend's coming up, and we're going to be doing a lot of card sorting. So thanks for joining me. Enjoy your collecting, and more importantly, enjoy your collection. Be safe Until we meet again, thanks you all.